My name is Gary Bontrager, your host at Mindset Growth Podcast. I have Heather, my co-host, here with me today. Heather, how are you?
I'm great. I'm nice and warm today, toasty.
That's a good thing. Sometimes this studio seems cold for you, so
It does.
we're going to get off to the warm start, right?
Yeah, we'll start that way,
Awesome.
see what happens.
Awesome. We're excited for this next guest. It's somebody we've gotten to know over the last year, and it's been interesting to see this person's approach on life and also see how just in business, how they've established and started businesses and how they've gone through all those struggles and continue to push forward and grow. Mm-hmm. What are some of your first thoughts?
First thoughts are starting businesses as his that we hear so much about these days. There's so many different angles that you can take to it.
Right.
And I look forward to learning more about his angles and what sets him apart.
I think the other thing that we often see with small business, it takes a tremendous amount of resiliency because there's so many factors in there. And we work with a lot of businesses in our other business as well. And the thing that we have with that often is people are a great plumber, electrician. They're very skilled in whatever it is they're doing. But then the whole business aspect, the marketing, the financial piece of it, all of those things come together. And often business owners learn that they're going to end up doing something they've not even really done before. So It's a big learning curve on how to adapt and adjust to that. So without any further ado, we will welcome Curtis Grimm to Mindset Growth Podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here. Finally, sit down with you guys.
Yeah.
No bald jokes to start today, Gary.
Well, you're putting me on the spot there.
We do see a nice glow.
Right.
Okay, well, that's good.
When you're here in person,
They
you got an aura.
They set the lighting up for him.
Yeah.
Just right.
Thank you,
So
guys.
it looks like the sun's coming up on your head.
Yeah, I'm providing the warmth for Heather.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
That's why you're feeling the warmth
Yeah.
today, Heather.
Feeling the
Curtis,
warmth.
tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and we like to do that. And when you're sharing that, just from the aspect of help people understand, a lot of times the background of where somebody comes is foundational, clearly for the rest of your life. We know that's really, from a lot of studies, a third of who we spend time with growing up, just that environment. And then, of course, our DNA is another third. Our current environment is really then what shapes us into some different things, but it's so impactful how we grew up. So share some of that with us.
Yeah. Well, it's funny thinking about that because the older you get, the more you can kind of see in yourself from your childhood, right? And for me, I grew up in Addison, Iowa, a town of 40 people. So very small community.
Whereabouts in Iowa is that?
So it's like in between Humboldt and Algona.
Okay. All right.
So, and then sometimes people don't know where that's at. And then I'm like, okay, 45 minutes north of Fort Dodge. And like, I know where Fort Dodge is.
You're up there.
Humboldt's a cool name. I always like that town, so I do know where that is at.
Humboldt and Algona are very nice towns.
Yeah.
But in Addison, to get anything, you got to drive 30 minutes just to get groceries or go out to eat or whatever. And I grew up on a farm. My dad cash rented from a family friend for a long time. We had, he had farmed corn, soybeans. We had cattle, sheep, goats, pigs.
Yeah.
I mean, really anything, right? And I think part of that, to go back to your point initially, is like when you grow up on the farm and you learn those things, right? There's a lot that you can't control when you grow up on the farm. You can't control the weather. You can't control the market.
Right.
And there's so much of that builds that perseverance of like, I believe in this. And if I just keep marching forward every day, I'll be successful eventually. Right. And I was born in the 80s. So farming wasn't, we weren't just printing money.
No.
Right. And it was tough. But my dad worked a full-time job. He farmed about 300 acres and we always had livestock.
Right.
Wow. You guys were busy.
Very, very busy. And I think, there's a component of my dad that I see in myself just with the work ethic. And then there's also parts of my childhood that, when your dad works that much, you just don't see your dad very often. Mm-hmm. Right. So and when you're a kid, you kind of hold that against them a little bit. And, as you grow up, you kind of start to see like, that's what was necessary for our family at the time. Right.
I think there's a lot of guilt, and I'm just going to visit that a little bit because I grew up on a farm as well. And I think there's a lot of guilt sometimes that fathers carry because they've got to work so much and be away from their families. But certainly the 80s were very difficult in agriculture in this country. I look back, and of course, we were on the farm all the time. My dad did not work off the farm because we had a dairy. But, I don't recall, but maybe once him riding a bike with me or playing ball with me, but he was always around. But I wouldn't trade it. I didn't feel really that slighted. I just thought the kids whose parents did construction and things like that were just lucky because they worked basically an 8 to 5 and came home. But now going back, I'm grateful for that experience growing up. So I don't know if that would relate back to you, if you feel that way or not.
Yeah, I think if you asked my dad today, would he say it was worth it? I think he 100% would. But I think he also now sees it from a different perspective of like, I missed a lot too. Right. And in my family, and this isn't the way for everybody, but my mom then played a large part of hauling me and my brother around everywhere, making sure we got to our sporting events, making sure we got to school and we could still participate in all that stuff. Right.
Yep. Well, I think that when you're in it, right, it's so hard to see the big picture until you have that moment to step away. And everyone can look back at their past and say, okay, hindsight's always 20/20, but I think it is important to try to see the bigger picture while you're in it too.
Yeah, for sure. I'll add one thing. So, my dad, everybody farmed where we were. Right. It's Northwest Iowa. That's all there is. All there was to farmland, right? So you didn't really know anything else. Right. But because my dad was always working, every summer, then we would work. Right. And this is just a funny story, and I just thought about this, but when I was like 13, there was a guy who had a dairy farm, and it wasn't a big operation, but he needed help, and Dad offered me. Right. And so every day I'd have to ride my bike 1.5 miles there and 1.5 miles back, and I would help him milk cows. Right. And I did this for a handful of weeks. And I wasn't getting paid. Right. And so I went to my dad and was like, hey, like, what's, you want me to do this? I kind of want to do this, but I'm not getting paid, so I don't want to do it anymore. And I remember him, like it was yesterday right now for some reason, but just looking at me and being like, sometimes we do things to help people just to help them. Right. And it was, that's interesting because he wasn't going to let me just stop showing up. Right.
No, and that's a cultural thing that I think we lose sight of a little bit, because it was the same for us. If the neighbor called or stopped by and said, I need help putting up hay, the worst job on the farm.
Terrible.
We were going. There was no pay. I mean, you'd get fed something to, drink all day, but you were going to go work your tail off. Yep. So today, I think there's a lot of, we have a lot more of an environment that's self-serving, and we've lost a piece of that. But something I always try to teach my kids, find ways to go help an older couple that was a neighbor or something. And, we're going to go down and clean the yard and do something for them, but we're not getting paid. You're not allowed to accept money from them. And of course, they would often slip them something. But, the point is you've got to give of yourself. But growing up on the farm then, and you also went to school and played some sports and things like that, I would imagine one thing that was unique to you was all your friends were in the same environment, clearly. So you had the same responsibilities at home. When I talk to folks that grew up in that type of environment, it also created, they would ride bikes, they didn't to their practices if they could, or catch rides, carpool. they didn't expect their parents to show up at every event. Today, if you're not showing up at your kids' events, you're less than a best parent, no question. But back then, money was not as readily available as it is today. And some of that was just driven out of necessity. It was hard times. So how did that also shape some of your work ethic when you got into that side of things? Yeah,
I think, so we lived in the country, and I was one of my first classmates that could drive.
Okay.
So, once you kind of get the car, then now you're picking up everybody.
Right.
Right. The mom, because the other moms and dads can't do it either.
Right.
So that was always interesting, and I had this 88 Cutlass Sierra, and it was a 4-cylinder. And
I think half of my school had that same car.
Yeah.
It was a pretty popular one.
Awesome car. And you couldn't ruin it like that. It would get through all the snow drifts and everything. Right. But I think back to that, and for me, that's kind of when the competitiveness kind of creeped into my life a little bit. Is, I can drive, and I was one of the first in my class that could drive. So I liked that feeling, right? Because it kind of brought people in.
Right.
And then, going in and playing sports and doing these things, and you're with the same my graduating class of 36 kids. Right. You're with the same 12 boys in everything you do.
Right.
Right. And I never was I never was really gifted. I just had to work really hard to participate in stuff. But you go back and look at all that too, and it's like, wow, I tried so hard and I didn't really accomplish anything. You play that through a million scenarios in life where you do, you want to try hard, but you can't. Like your brain, your body, whatever's not letting you try hard.
But you played football, I have to believe, and you probably were a lineman.
I was not.
You were not?
So no. So when I was in high school,
like you're built for one.
I've beefed up a lot in some areas we don't like. But no, I was 165 pounds in high school.
Oh, okay.
And so I ran track. I was running back, linebacker, cornerback, safety. And I didn't
all
wrestle.
the things when you're at a small school.
Yeah, we didn't wrestle because all the kids are out for basketball, so we didn't have wrestling. But I would have enjoyed that.
So moving on, we like to always talk with our guests about a morning routine if it's important to you. We know that you have some little ones, and we know how that can affect a potential morning routine. Yeah. But do you have one?
So yeah, and really, I think I would say our morning routine kind of starts at night.
Yes.
Where we're really diligent on having the kids. We're reading books. We usually say a prayer. I know it's not for everybody, but usually say a prayer, and then we just kind of go around and talk about what we're thankful for the day. And it's funny, my 3-year-old will just be like, I'm thankful for mommy and Rudy and, all these other, Rudy's our dog. These strange things. Like the other night, she was like, I'm thankful for the lights. And she's just looking around the room. But it kind of starts there, I think, for us. And then my wife is a nurse. So her day every day is a little different. Right. She doesn't start at the same time. She doesn't get off at the same time. But credit to her, every night she sets out the clothes for them to wear. And not to kind of ramble here, but today, it was school picture day. And she took a lot of time last night setting out my son's clothes. Just a jeans, pretty simple shirt with a nice jacket. And now she's gone and I'm presenting this outfit, right? And he hates every piece of it. And we are not up early enough to change plans here. Like we didn't get started at the right amount of time, right? So I go to the room, I grab all these different clothes, and then, we're getting to head out the door, and all he has is these orange sneakers, because that's what he likes, orange, and he has orange shoes. And I'm like, you can't wear orange shoes. You got a nice button down on, nice pants. Like we can't send you off with.
That's the thing now, Dad.
I know.
Well,
I know.
Nice jacket.
My hat's off to anybody that's a nurse. It's a difficult occupation with schedules and everything, and it does take a toll on a family too. There's a lot of things to navigate around that.
Yeah. She has a lot of pride in what she does.
Should, yeah.
And I'm proud of her as well. she was a social worker out of college. So she's just been serving people, and she has a heart for it. She's awesome at it. But it's a tough career.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of folks with kids, it can be very interesting on morning routines. Successful people all will have some type of routine, as much as, clearly some days it's not as loud. For myself, the night before is always going through, seeing what the schedule is the next day. And it's just that mental prep. I know when my kids were young, it's interesting, and I would challenge any parent that's listening to this. You can alleviate a lot of stress with kids if they have some sort of idea of what's going to happen.
Yes.
It creates a lot of chaos. There's some personalities that love chaos and just whatever happens and the excitement of it all, but the large majority of folks like routine. And if you're going to take somebody who wants to know what's going to happen and how that works, and then you just keep throwing them chaos in their little world, it makes it very difficult for them. So I can appreciate.
That's not just kids. That's people in general.
It is. And I think one reason I like to bring this up on every podcast, I hope when people listen to this, they can develop a sense of importance on schedules, excuse me, on schedules and on developing just more of a pattern on how they function. I think they're going to find a larger level of success. It's a big deal though for kids. It just is.
Separately, I'm Gage.
And I'm Bontrager.
Together, we are Gage Bontrager Consulting.
We work on changing your mindset,
Developing leaders,
building systems and processes,
helping you grow personally and professionally
to achieve the success that you want personally and professionally.
however you choose to define success for you.
Reach out to us and follow us on social media or look us up on the website, and that will put you on a path to achieve what is missing in your life.
Thanks for watching this episode of Mindset Growth Podcast.
I spent a lot of time at a bigger marketing agency for a while, and there was a gal on my team who every day was something different, coming in at different times. The kids got all these things and whatever. And, I don't have all the answers, but I could see like she wasn't helping her kids.
Right.
And I had a sit down meeting with her one time and was like, do you ever think about how much easier it gets every morning gets for you if you just tell your kids, I'm going to be at work at 8:00 every day.
Right.
And that's a non-negotiable, and you're going to do it. Right. And she was like, no, she was kind of just letting them dictate her. Mm-hmm. Right. And like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I could just see she wanted to be successful. She didn't want to keep, going on performance warnings and getting these written things. And it was like, this is where we start this.
Well, 0 to 7, a child does not have the ability to reason. From 7 to 14, that's when that starts to develop. And then from 14, some of us, it takes a lot longer, but say 24 or 5, males longer than women typically, to really establish a lot of that. But those routines are, it's just a big deal on how that happens. We're going to switch gears. We do something that we call rapid fire questions. I'm sure if you've listened to our podcast, these are coming. And I'm going to start with the first one. What are the 3 most least likely words that somebody would use to describe you?
Oh, man. Good question. I would say boring. Boring would be a good one. I think I'm very far from boring. I would say nobody would say I'm sluggish. And like, I want to use lazy, but I think that's kind of a cop out. So I'll try to find a different one quick. Heartless. I think no one would describe me as heartless.
Okay. Those are great.
Yeah. You gotta...
Sometimes we stump people with some of those, but those are great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Off the cuff.
It goes to the helping others.
Right.
Yeah.
Heartless. What was your worst job?
Jeez, that milking cows was pretty
I
bad.
was wondering.
You know, when you don't get paid. Worst job. This is good. All right. I worked for,
Probably shouldn't name drop.
yeah. We'll skip that one. You know, I think I'll just go with, detasseling.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You know, like
all of them.
You could,
And the heat.
so, the heat, and
Itch.
I am, vertically challenged. And, you know, like when they chop it, it works great, but some of it doesn't get chopped.
Yep.
And I need like a step stool for every single corn stalk. Yeah, there was one summer and I got caught. I just snapping them because I was like, I can't reach them.
Can't get there.
It's going to take me 3 years to get through this field with my little short group people I got with me. And they walked back my row. That was a deal with Dad too. Like, oh man, he didn't like that.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. Sounds like you had the same
Excuse me.
work ethics instilled that I did. No, I would agree. Detasseling is a sucky job. For
Yeah.
anybody.
You get paid pretty good as a young kid though.
You did.
I feel
For
like I
sure.
don't see nearly as much of that as what I used to.
It's all machines
Yeah.
now, I think.
Okay.
They
They pretty well got it all. They do it a different way.
you know, that human walking through snapping the corn they had enough of that.
The human capital is becoming a tougher issue to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
What's one of the weirdest things you've ever seen walking or driving down the street?
So there was one, this is a good question. There was one moment where, and it was early in the day, and I don't know what I was doing, but I was driving to Iowa City from Cedar Rapids, and off the off-ramp from Centerpoint Road to 380, there was just a car on fire with a person standing there looking at it. And there was no emergency vehicles. And, you know, you play the scenarios like, how did this happen?
Yeah, how's it burning like this and nobody's here?
It was like 5 a.m. It made no sense. That's probably the weirdest thing I've seen.
That reminds me of a meme that my son loves to play, this kind of card game. What do you meme? And there's a house on fire. And in the picture, the little girl is just looking back at the camera, smiling. I mean, it looks so sinister, but when someone puts a camera up, that's generally your first instinct is to just smile.
Yeah.
Because you're taught to smile for the camera.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So let's get into the meat of this, Curtis.
Sure.
So we've kind of alluded to your marketing company, Digital Boost Marketing. How long ago did you start the company, and where did this idea come from?
Yeah. So I'll take you back to when I was at the other marketing business.
Okay.
I was there for 8 years. And I had started from the floor and had worked up to a sales manager role, managing a team of inside salespeople, 15 to 20 at a time. And you know, once you got to that management role, you're the one that kind of started to handle a lot of the customer interaction. And I really, you know, I just was like, man, I can't believe small businesses like this is their best option. And that's kind of where the idea started, right? So this is years ago. Digital Boost was created in my head like 2 years ago. But didn't formalize until November of last year. And, you know, it all kind of came from somebody's got to be able to do this better, right? And it wasn't better in terms of like build a better product or, you know, marketing is kind of what it is. Once in a while you run into somebody with the secret sauce, right? But there's not a lot of that. And usually they're very expensive. Right. But really it was like for the small business owner, somebody has to care more, try harder, answer the phone, answer questions, whatever. Right. And that's kind of how Digital Boost kind of started in my mind.
How long did that take you to go from in your mind to, okay, I'm going to do this?
A while. Really, it was bringing my wife along with me for the ride.
There's a lot of faith that goes into
faith, fear.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in, you guys know this, and anybody running their own company knows this, but when you're doing your own thing, it's you. Like, you know, everything depends on you, your family, income, you know, letting people down. Like, there's just a lot of fear around that. And, you know, maybe she didn't see in me what I did in myself. That's probably something for me to think about. Like, what was I doing that, you know, maybe didn't get that belief quicker?
Well, you needed to do, I mean, clearly you had to sell her on the idea, but beyond that, even probably a lot of it's security.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you've got a lifestyle that's comfortable, you know, you look back and I can tell one of your drivers, like even just in that comment, was the fact of serving other people and trying to give them a better product. For her, she's working her schedule. You guys have kids. Life's probably pretty good and it's working out, you know, it's routine. A lot of times, no doubt if she's a nurse, she's also service-based in her mind, but to go out and have that unknown, a lot of times it's, even though her schedule varies, it's very comfortable for her to know at least this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I can imagine, and it kind of leads us into the next question of what drove you to start it. And, you know, you mentioned that piece of wanting to deliver basically a better product to a niche market of small business. But when you break that all down, is there like a more of a reward? I mean, do you see potential? I mean, clearly you have to see potential for yourself and your family as well.
Yeah. I actually don't think about that very often.
Right.
And I do think that there was a maturity thing that happened a couple of years ago for me where I was very income driven as a young man, you know, probably from my dad. Like,
right.
I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to work as hard as he was working
right.
to make it in life. Right. And a year and a half ago, my whole perspective on life and everything kind of changed. Maybe it was my kids, really.
Right.
But I'm, you know, really focused on doing this with the people that I have in my team, supporting them through
right.
business, and then supporting my clients. And then really, you know, my family is kind of the last thing in my mind. And I can't explain that. And I can't pinpoint the trigger, but it's a freeing thing. Mm-hmm. It really is for me anyways, when I got to the spot of like, I have great kids. I have an amazing wife. I have a nice house, right? That there's nothing wrong with. We got good cars that drive us and get us to where we're wanting to go. What else does a guy need? Mm-hmm. You know? And once I kind of got there, you're not as worried as you used to be.
Right.
I feel like.
Well, you're confident in your ability of what you've also accomplished up to this point. And you made a statement though that's interesting. You don't think so much about your kids basically or your family as you go into this. Can you expound on that a little? Because it might come off cold-hearted to somebody.
Yeah. I think that, yes, I can. I think that I'm very comfortable betting on myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's where it comes from. There's moments, you know, I was in college and then I didn't graduate, like a really smart person. And then
I didn't graduate either.
Yeah. I needed a job. Like I needed a job. Right. And I started working for this outsourced telemarketing company selling long distance phone service.
Oh, awesome.
And I was good. No one knew I'd be good.
Sold some long distance service too. One.
Yeah, man, I was given
those days are over.
You could give $500 Visa gift cards with the purchase of I was slinging those things like crazy. And then there was a gal at this business. I'll give her name's Heather Hoyt, and she really kind of took me under her wing, and saw that, you know, hey, I have a fairly talented salesperson, but like this guy can be a leader, right? And she was really the first person in my life that was like, you can do more.
Right.
Right. And so to make a long story short, I left that job because I just had felt like I hit the ceiling.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I had a conversation with my dad who has never left a job. Right. And
Well,
he
that
was like,
taboo in that age 'cause they were hard to find.
yeah. And he was like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, like you should not be doing this. And I just remember telling him like, I'm going to be fine.
Right.
You know, just like, and then I go to this other company, start at the bottom, then I become a sales manager. And so I think that comes from just believing in myself and knowing that, you know, I'll go try as hard as I can at this. And if it doesn't work, Curtis can go do something else.
Right. And be okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. If I would give any advice to anybody that's wanting to start a business, is there has to be a level of confidence. And it may even almost need a level of false confidence, but you have to believe in yourself
Yeah, a little bit,
that it's going to happen.
And find someone that can also believe in you and give you a little bit of push too. There's people out there. I think that a lot of times people have a hard time finding that person or think that they're not in their life, but they are.
Yeah. That circle around you, right? And whether that's employees, contractors, family, friends, you need those people because you're going to be weak. There's going to be moments where you're just, it's going to feel like the weight of the world is coming down on you, and they got to be there to support you. I really am a big believer in that.
I would agree with that. Curtis, where can people find you if they want to look you up and learn more about you?
Yeah, well, on the internet. But website is digitalboostia.com. Obviously on Facebook, social media, Google my business.
LinkedIn.
Yep.
Those profiles are completely filled out.
Yep. No.
Awesome.
You know that. No, but I will say that's something that I need to get done today. So thanks for bringing it up here.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, guys.
If you enjoyed this episode with Curtis, stay with us, and we will have another one coming up shortly.